Well, in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to get the numbers for the holiday season and see how the various forecasts are borne out. The National Retail Federation had forecast a gain in November, December holiday sales of 3.5 to 5% or so. Although we talked to one retail analyst yesterday who said that ain't going to happen. Let's ask another. Katie Thomas is with us now. She is the lead of the Kearney Consumer Institute. And Katie, I know you guys have been doing a lot of research about sort of consumer attitudes right now. If you can extrapolate what that tells you about how robust this holiday shopping season is going to be, what does it tell you?
Yeah, all things considered, I would say this was a relatively successful holiday season, given some initial consumer concerns around, financial concerns, safety, all of that. It was really propped up by use of the online and new offerings such as curbside pickup, where consumers really felt like they were still able to engage with their favorite stores in different ways. And that really lifted the performance across the board as people turned to these, they really loved some of those new options such as curbside, which allowed them to get things a little bit quicker, still engage with their store, but not be as concerned about shipping timing and some of those other, concerns floating around out there.
Okay, so I'm out there shopping at some of my favorite retailers, walking up and down the aisles. I'm on their website shopping too of late. And the prices for a lot of products, whether it's cleaning products or even some apparel items, they seem really high, much higher than they were at this point last year. Are retailers taking advantage of consumers right now, and or are they even just flat out price gouging?
There's a little bit of both happening. Consumers on their end certainly feel like pricing is going up. So the research we've done in talking to consumers, that was the biggest complaint, is I feel like prices are going up. Now, some of that is due to trip consolidation. So folks feel like prices are going up, but in reality, in a lot of cases, they maybe are not. It's just less spend elsewhere, more spend in a single trip. But certain categories, I do think retailers have kind of gotten hip to the trade of what consumers are interested in. I know, to your point exactly, certain home goods, kitchenware, things like that, that normally would be heavily discounted for the holidays were not this year. So retailers did start to figure out which products they were discounting and which weren't. And I think, there were certain categories, like you said, that were not as steeply discounted as they have been in years past. And consumers certainly noticed that.
And Katie, do you think that's a one-off dynamic because consumers only could really buy stuff this year? You couldn't take a trip, or some people did. You weren't supposed to take a trip. You can't go to restaurants quite the same volume, movies, so on and so forth. And people have just been able to accumulate homewares, for example. Do you think consumers will have to go, or rather retailers will have to go back to discounting that stuff, maybe next year or the years beyond?
I do. I think, they're certainly taking advantage of the fact that people aren't able to tap into that experience over things element. But what you have seen too is a lot of that has correlated with what people need, and that will continue. So even as we're able to travel again, go back to concerts, you may see retailers, they've learned to be a little savvy now. And so you can see that where athleisure and categories like that weren't really discounted. Same with, home goods. Those folks may have to go back to discounting, but other, higher end, as people go out to restaurants or purchase new items for travel, they may be able to lessen their discount. So I think, it's really that adaptability in retailers and figuring out what consumers really need to engage in those experiences.
Katie, I talk to my friends that cover retail, and they continue to tell me the past few weeks, Brian, there are going to be thousands of store closures, retail store closures, more of them in the first half of next year. What's the impact to the consumer from that? Essentially, they will have fewer places to shop.
That's true, but I would also argue part of the reason you're seeing these store closures is a lot of these traditional mall retailers, some of those folks leading the closures, have really lost their sense of self on who they are to the consumer and what the consumer needs from them. And that's why they were on this precipitous edge that sort of tossed them over the edge, is that these malls became really standardized, not new offerings. And the reality is, whether it's channels, products, et cetera, there's so many options for consumers nowadays that the reason these stores are closing is frankly because consumers already were not shopping there like they used to. And so they'll find what they're looking for elsewhere because that's kind of what they're already doing.
Right. The pandemic may have hastened their demise, but it didn't necessarily cause it. Katie, thanks so much. Katie Thomas, the lead of the Kearney Consumer Institute. Good to get some time with you this morning. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.